Because, of course, we need to start with Epstein and everything that is going on in this world. Let's go back to Sunday night. Everybody's watching all the floods in Texas, and Axios, yes, they dropped the exclusive, and it said this, exclusive, DOJ, FBI conclude that Epstein had no client list and he died by suicide. Now, this was not just a justice memo. It was a joint release from the DOJ and FBI. And they said that as part of our commitment to transparency, the DOJ and FBI had conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein. It is the determination of the DOJ and the FBI that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Now, guys, I think that we go back to the Sunday night release of all of this. I think that they were hoping that no one would actually notice, right? Everybody's watching all the floods in Texas. I think that they're like, all right, you know what? If we're going to do this, this isn't going to be popular. Let's just go ahead and try and put it out there. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you make a fair point, right? I mean, this is not a big, sexy headline. This is an announcement that Epstein is sort of a nothing burger, and there's no there. And the fact that you put it out on Friday night is telling. But it didn't stay there, because I think what happened here is that they tripped over one of the hidden themes of American politics for the last 10, 20 years, and that is that people have a fear of corruption in government. And you could see this building over the last few decades. So normally in America, you think, middle-class mindset. At the end of the day, the bad guys go to jail, roughly speaking, and there's injustices and there's things that happen. But, it's a decent country. The rule of law applies. And yeah, some libs get mad about, the elites getting over on the little guy, and sometimes they do. But generally speaking, it's fine. And, the poors think everything's corrupt. But the sort of middle-class mindset, the normal American mindset, was that rule of law applies in this country. And what you've seen over the last few decades is the realization that that's not actually true, that you live in 1930s Chicago all the time. And Epstein is kind of the pinnacle of that, when you just couldn't deny how corrupt this whole thing is, how weird it was, how someone could walk in these circles at that level and be so corrupt and be doing such terrible things. And then, of course, you start pulling the strings on this, and you got to wonder why the cameras, why there's. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't think. Anyone I consider relatively intelligent about the world doesn't think there's intelligence agencies involved at some point in this case. So Epstein is like the case for corruption in America, the chickens coming home to roost, and regular people going, what the hell is going on? And so when you say that everything's okay in the Epstein case and there's nothing to see here, that's going to be a problem, because it's now part of the populist mindset for good reason.
So, Chris, where is all the transparency that Pam Bondi was promising everyone? They were saying, oh, it's right there. We're going to be the most transparent administration of all time. And they even put Caroline Leavitt out in her press conference yesterday saying, oh, we showed you. These are the findings. We found nothing.
Oh, yeah. And then today at the cabinet meeting, Pam Bondi was like, hey, what do you mean you want to see the video? You want to see the evidence? There's 10,000 hours of video. You can't see that perfect. It's child pornography. Basically, how dare you?
Yeah.
And even the president was out there just super irritated that my old colleague, Stephen Nelson, who's now with the New York Post, had even asked about this. He's like, what do you mean we're talking about this? Are we still talking about this? We dropped that news on Friday. It's over. Why are we talking about this?
Let's go ahead. We actually have Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and watch him here with that, because it's exactly what you're talking about. So let's go ahead and watch Donald Trump from earlier today.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking... We have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened.
All right, Chris, take it away from here.
So Pam Bondi came out and after that followed up and said, basically, listen, this is child porn. We're not showing that to you, which I find difficult to believe that it was literally 10,000 hours of child pornography videos. There's no people who are in the meetings. There's no just hanging out. And a lot of this stuff was home video and security cameras. It wasn't just things that were downloaded from the internet. This is not Osama bin Laden's hard drive. So I'm skeptical of that. But the end result, and I think the reason why people are unhappy about this is there's essentially two options. Either Pam Bondi is grossly incompetent, and a lot of the other people who are involved who made these promises are just grossly incompetent. But we know that the PR strategy at the early release and with the binders was grossly incompetent. So maybe there's something to that, or maybe it's a combination. Because the second aspect is that this is above their pay grade. That they dug into this, they said, we're going to come out with this information. And then they realized, oh, we thought we were in charge here, but there are actually intelligence assets, not possibly involving American allies, possibly involving us, possibly both.
Right.
And we actually can't go releasing the evidence and the files that we have here. I mean, there are some folks that go out there and say, hey, the real reason is that it implicates everyone. It implicates President Trump. Now, I don't buy that for a second, because I think that if the Democrats had anything on Donald Trump, that they would sink him. They would have done that during President Joe Biden's term, and they would have sacrificed Bill Clinton, who's been in retirement for decades now, easily to do it. They would have sacrificed a senator here or a congressman there. They would have taken their lumps to stop him from becoming president if he was involved in this. If it involved more royals, the Democrats wouldn't care how badly this impacted the British royal family or really anyone if they could have taken down Donald Trump. So I don't believe that at all. It's either above their pay grade or they were too stupid to know what they were talking about. And either one of those things is not a good option.
Yeah, we should talk about the above the pay grade option in a bit, but first we can't help it. I can't help it. No one loves President Trump more than this show, but we can't help but admit there was a Dave Chappelle moment here that some of us were reminded of. Can we play that? It was reminiscent of this.
What about people who say you're only interested in the Middle East for oil?
What? Huh? Oil? Who said something about oil? You cooking?
Now Trump would never run away. Trump's just being belligerent. Like, what are you talking about? Why are we still talking about it? I can't believe you're talking about it. But it's not a good look. It's a rare moment where it wasn't a good look for him, who's usually hits it out of the park every single time, and it's odd because it's so deflective. Everything about it's deflective. I noticed Julie Kelly, actually, conservative media type, was saying the same thing with Bannon, and Bannon was having none of it, saying like, oh, are we still talking about that? We should be talking about January 6th. We should be talking about January 6th, but what the hell's going on here? So, I mean, let's go through these options again. What are the options? Because there is the above the pay grade option, which is that, a foreign intelligence service was involved. Clearly, like, our intelligence service would have to be involved in some way at that point, and that would make it a sensitive matter. This is not, this is almost to the point where it's just, it's not like real hidden conversation at this point. We've already talked about Epstein for years with all of our friends, everyone we know. I was following this way before, like in the beginning when it first broke. Back when I was doing corruption stuff and was just amazed, and then it came back to the headlines and everyone knows about it. So the intelligence service option is real, right? And in that scenario, let's just be real clear about it. This would be a matter of, this is way too messy to talk about and make public. We just need to move on, right? What would the thinking be there?
That's just one of those questions that probably have been asked previously. So let's go through some of the great conspiracy theories of the 20th century and see which one of those. Let's say Donald Trump gets in office and he finds out that FDR did know that Pearl Harbor was going to happen and thought that military action against us probably wouldn't be that devastating and was worth getting the United States into World War II. Or let's say the CIA really did have a heavy hand in killing John F. Kennedy. I don't know on either of those matters. If he found that out, how much good would it do to release that information versus how much bad would it do to release that information? What would that do to trust in the American people? What would that the American people have in their government? What would that do to an actually extremely important aspect of any functioning society, which is having legends, having heroes, looking back and not having extremely clear villains that unravel way too much? And it's not even Those don't even have to be friends of Donald Trump's. Everybody involved could be dead. There could be no connection at all to him, but the implications are just too soiled, not the kind of thing that you want to dig into. Now, the Epstein Island stuff is a significantly more recent scandal, the kind of thing where you're going to have methods and operations, intelligence gathering, honeypot traps, the kind of things that I know for a fact our government does engage in. I don't know for a fact, but typically with underage girls, but you hear about this as one of the reasons the United Nations is so important to have in New York City. It's just one big honeypot for foreign dictators and leaders who want to come over here and get away from the wife and kids and let off a little steam with some hookers and drugs in old fancy Manhattan. Well, now you're on video. The same thing that we understand when American dignitaries or celebrities go and spend some time in Moscow or spend some time in Beijing. They're not the only people who spy on you in your hotel rooms, guys. The United States does that too. So the actually living, which it would be, and empowered American intelligence assets, operations, and those of our allies, and the different things that have been used to blackmail. So let's say Epstein Island had reaped different blackmail over world leaders who are in power, who aren't necessarily inclined to be our friend. You don't want that information out there, then it's not blackmail anymore. Right? So right now, it's just better to take your lumps on Twitter and say, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and charged and imprisoned for human trafficking underage women to no one. And just take it. I have to deal with this. I'm not going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to talk about the tooth fairy or this or that. It's too much. And that's a really unsatisfactory answer, but it doesn't make it completely wrong. But it would explain the reason why there are basically no public defenders.
Mm-hmm.
As reporters, we've been reaching out and looking to defenders of the administration on this, looking for the people who are willing to take the line. And you had those in previous things. Of course, there were people who were willing to say, no, the likeliest scenario with JFK, which I actually believe, is that he was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. That's it. There may have been other really shady stuff that happened before and after, but that was it. There's no one coming out really and just saying that except for pay no mind here with the Epstein stuff. And I think that's because people don't know. People who do know don't want to talk about it. And it's better to just move on for this admin. And well, I don't love it. I kind of understand that.
Well, it's kind of like the old conundrum of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So at this point in time, why go out there and say anything? But you were talking about trust, right? I think that this is going to be a huge moment for especially the MAGA base that is looking at this and going, okay, I think that you've misjudged this. If you're Donald Trump, and to Matt's point from earlier, you have to go through and maybe just say something. And I look at this and I look at it was a DOJ thing. Pam Bondi is the boss. Whether you want to lump in the FBI or not, Pam Bondi is the one that is over the FBI making this happen. So if Pam wants to lump in the FBI, she can. They can't go out there and do anything. But it is going to be about trust. And do you trust Pam Bondi and others when other events come up and you need that level of trust to go through and just say, hey, just believe us on X, Y, or Z that's going to come in the future?
Yeah, this is the problem.
I have a column coming on this tomorrow morning too, which I'll let you go, Matt, but I got some thoughts to add at the end.
No, go ahead.
I got a column coming out this tomorrow, and because you read in the DC Plus for press right now that MAGA's going to go to civil war. Between this and between what's going on with Ukraine and between whatever. I actually don't think that's going to end up happening at all. I think that when you have an ideological movement that is still largely under the control of its founding member, still the leader, it's going to stay coherent. I think that there will be consequences potentially for some of the senior staff in the White House, including Pam Bondi. This makes her look bad. It's not just because she has to take her lumps with the administration. It's not just because they said, all right, you need to go out there and say there's nothing there. It's because it's for months she's been taking completely unnecessary lumps and causing unnecessary PR disasters to administration. So we're only 7 months into a 4-year term, President Trump's final term. By the end of this, you're going to have a wall that's been completed. The money's there at Build Back Better. They just added I think $47 trillion to do deportations and do another part of the Donald Trump agenda. You got the tax thing. You've got what's going on in Texas. You've got the reshoring that's going on right now and the attempts to revitalize the American economy. You've got trade war. Those are the things that are really going to keep this coalition, the political coalition, still moving and still following. But you're going to take this is not a good moment. It's an ugly moment, and I just don't think it's permanent.
Yeah, I can see not being permanent. I don't think anyone should be freaking out or, getting depressed about what's going on. What we see is just kind of normal, things settle and then real disputes come out. Some people are found out to be incompetent, can't do their job. And then, there's always the different factions are going to come from over here and whisper in Trump and other people's ear, oh, we need to do this. And it's good we fight these things out. But I just want to go back to the trust issue because I think that is fundamentally broken in America by almost every measure. And so the problem is here, there was, this is a rare case where the administration overpromised and underdelivered. And this is an important issue to a lot of people. So if you're going to say, right, we're going to JFK, we're going to find the truth about aliens, we're going to try to find the truth about, MLK and everything else, and we're going to put it all out there on the line. And then the biggest case that everyone knows from recently, you sort of botch in this way. That's tough stuff. And that will not help the trust issue in this country. And the dynamic, it may be the case that I think you're right, Chris, that this is a common theme in government. I mean, you have to look at, are you really doing more harm than good by revealing some things because you actually hurt institutions that are necessary to help people? No doubt about it. The problem is that line has covered up so much for so long with some of these institutions that no one trusts anymore already, right? Where the right doesn't trust the FBI, the right doesn't trust the DOJ. So this is not going away in terms of an issue, anytime soon. And there's a lot that the administration could still do to inspire trust, even if they don't do anything about Epstein. It's not going to tear the whole coalition apart. But their underlying theme here is, was to restore that trust. And so these kinds of things are serious. They are serious. They have serious effect.
It's going to be an uphill battle, though, because Glenn Beck called this the worst rollout of information that he had ever seen earlier today. And our Steve Deace was saying that people will put up with politicians being corrupt and liars, especially if they're on our side. But we have low expectations for politicians. But Pam Bondi is committing the cardinal sin that people rarely tolerate, being played for fools, schmucks, and suckers, Chris Bedford. They don't like that when you look at them and you say, no, it's fine. You just trust us. And we know that there's something off with that. We don't like that as humans.
Yes, and I think that there's decent evidence that Pam Bondi's got other failings in this job, that she's not potentially up to it for a number of different reasons. That the DOJ is not prosecuting the cases that a lot of the people who really follow this stuff and really care about this stuff think it ought to be prosecuting. I know, Peterson, you've talked about that. We've got a couple of hosts who've talked about it at much more depth than I'm capable of going into. But she has committed that sin. And this hand wave and that's not exactly what I said on Fox. Sure, actually, that was a smooth operator move. In the press conference, she said, listen, I didn't say I had the client list on my desk. When you asked about the client list, I said, I have it all on my desk. And sure, that's potentially true. I know for a fact that sometimes you say offhanded things on TV, when then someone later wants to know what the heck you meant by that. You say, I actually don't quite remember what were we talking about again? It's a little bit of a blur. But her job was to handle this. It was a delicate rollout. I mean, I was talking to folks in the White House the day before the Bindergate, and one of the guys said, I went over and looked at the binders because they're out. Reporters haven't seen them. We've known forever that Epstein and Trump had communications, that they had each other's phone numbers. We knew that Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. Guess what? Trump's in the binder. What's the plan for this? This is all public information. What are we doing here? You're just adding bad press, fuel to the fire. And it wasn't run through the proper channel. So there was extreme irritation mixed with just some eye rolling. And nothing that's happened in the weeks since have made that go away. I think that, in that first administration, I remember walking into a fairly prominent conservative's office, and they had the New York Post headline with all the different faces of the cabinet, and they were just marking them off with X's as they dropped one by one. Now, in that first administration, where the president didn't have as clear a hand on what he was doing, didn't have the support he has right now, that first cabinet dropped like flies. The second administration is significantly more competent, significantly more practiced and polished, with people who are all largely mission aligned and are going about excellent business. But sooner or later, in all cabinets, especially in high pressure environments, which any White House is, but this White House is especially high pressure environment with what's going on right now, eventually you're going to see some casualties.
Yeah, and we should say, I mean, Bondi was never, I mean, this was never a great stellar pick in my mind. Bondi was someone who maybe could do, a decent job. She had been an attorney general. She was, but she's not someone who exemplified sort of the new movement. So it was always a matter of, well, maybe she's a competent leader who can get done what the White House wants, them to get done over at DOJ. But given everything we've seen, I assume. Here's the thing: the difference is, to your point, the difference is that in this administration, when people are bounced out, I think we're going to get better and better people to replace them. And in this case, let's hope that's the case. Yeah, same.
I mean, I know he's anathema to MAGA these days, but I remember thinking that one of the most competent attorney generals was the return of Bill Barr, after having already done the job and foiled Clinton, who came after him, and really done some work in the DOJ, that he was a master player. Problem is, he wasn't always politically aligned, and that is important.